Thursday, June 15th, 2017 meeting of the Radnor Zoning Hearing Board. Hear you. If you want to join us, come on in. The first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I invite you to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item, which is anticipated to be continued, but we're going to go through a certain level of formalities for the record here. Appeal number 2985, the applicant Villanova University, property located at Villanova West Campus at Spring Mill and County Line Roads and zoned P1, appeals the determination of the zoning officer dated March 9th, 2017, or in the alternative requests a variance from Section 280-69C regarding height of the structure or such other relief as may be required from Section 280-69C or Section 280-70 of the zoning code to install an air-supported temporary seasonal dome on its west campus. As everyone here in the room sees, today we are a board of 3, which is sufficient for a quorum for our board. Mr. Hombick, to my left, is an adjunct professor at Villanova University, and as such has understandably indicated that it's his intent to recuse himself on Appeal 2985. As a courtesy to the applicant, there has been conversation between the board solicitor and the applicant's solicitor in connection with this, so the applicant is not surprised by this circumstance. Nick, do you have any interest in waiving the quorum requirement on behalf of the applicant?
No, Bill, as you know, the issue would be that we could possibly make the decision voidable by anyone. So as a result, we have given the board an extension of time to have a hearing on this matter for an additional 35 days, which brings us to the third Thursday in July. And we also given the board an extension of time to file a written opinion after the final hearing on this matter to 45 days after that. Which
we appreciate. Now, in the absence of anybody from staff with us this evening, I will indicate to the staff, and perhaps council can backstop me here, that under the circumstance, to the extent staff concludes it has the flexibility to waive any further fee in connection with the continuance request because it is required by the circumstance of the short quorum for the board. And I will tell you, given it was continued twice previously, this is the third. I know the first two were university related, but if for any reason the meeting in July is infirmed as it applies to a quorum for this application, I'll make every effort I can to schedule a special board meeting so you don't have to wait until September.
Yeah, thank you. And Bill, I just want to make it clear, and I think everyone's aware of this, is that we were ready to proceed this evening, just the fact that the board did not have a quorum, and that's why we agreed to a continuance.
I understand that. So the continuance is granted. Anything else, John, on this matter?
I think that the applicant has. Sorry. Nick, I believe you told me that the applicant is going to send notice of the continued hearing to the people that you know about who are interested in this.
We already notified them that tonight would be continued, and actually that email included saying that it is our understanding that it will be listed on
July 20th.
July 20th. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any broad sense of how many folks would have been interested and come out in connection?
I don't know. Our email list is pretty massive. I'm not certain how many people would appear there.
All right. Okay, so this item is continued. Thank you, and thank you for coming out so we can get this on the record. Second item, Appeal 2987. Is the applicant here?
We are.
Okay, I'm going to read the application, which is lengthy. Appeal 2987, the applicant Gary E. McLean, property located at 307 and 309 Conestoga Road and zoned R3, seeks relief sought by variance, special exception, or otherwise under Section 280-101B and C to permit the following relief for these two lots which are non-conforming because they are narrower at the building line than permitted under section 280-25, or a finding that the relief is permitted by right, more specifically detailed as follows: to allow as to 307 first under section 280-25A for the construction of a new single-family house on is required. B, under section 280-225D1, which requires 2 side yards, which shall be not less than 35 feet in aggregate width, and neither of which shall be less than 15 feet in width, for the intrusion of the proposed new single-family house into the side yard setbacks as shown on the attached plans as to 307 and 309. The construction and use of a shared driveway between the two lots is shown on the attached plan, which is necessitated by the narrowness of the two lots, which will eliminate the use of off-street parking on 307, eliminate the existing off-street parking within the front yard setback on 309, which is non-conforming under section 280-105A, because it is not separated from Conestoga Road by at least 5 feet by a barrier of the sizes or types required. As to 309A, under section 280-25A, for the continued nonconformity of the existing single-family house on the lot, which is 50 feet wide at the building line, where a width of 70 feet at the building line is required. B, under section 280-25C, for the continued intrusion of the existing house into the front yard setback by 4.8 feet because it is only 30.2 feet from Conestoga Road, where 35 feet is required. C, under section 280-25D, which requires the 2 side yards, which shall be not less than 35 feet in aggregate width, and neither of which shall be less than 15 feet in width, for the continued intrusion of the existing single-family house into the side yard setbacks as shown on the attached plan. D, if permission to construct the common driveways requested in paragraph 2 hereof is not granted, to permit the continued nonconformity of the off-street parking as it exists on 309 Conestoga Road. That being the applicant, or that being the appeal of the applicant or their counsel could approach and let us know what you have to say.
Good evening, members of the board and Mr. Ryan. I'm sorry I had to go through all that reading. The applicant has decided to withdraw the requests pertaining for any relief to 309 Conestoga Road, which means that we are pursuing only the relief requested in paragraph 1 of the amended relief requested in the application. It reduces the application to one for relief from the requirements of lot width at the building line and side yards to allow the applicant to build his proposed house and attached garage on the lot at 307 Conestoga Road.
Counsel, I took the liberty of marking up what goes out. Does that look right?
It does. Or under the sections involved are 280-101B and C, 25A, and 25D1.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that's correct. And the amended request for relief that I submitted puts all of that in separate paragraphs. So if you look at that, it's only paragraph numbered 1
Okay.
that we're here about tonight.
Okay, because I couldn't find number 2 actually, but I'm going to put this in as T1 into the file.
That'd be fine. The only reason we included 309 was because of the common driveway. I felt that if we did that, we might need to request to continue the nonconformities at 309 because we were actually putting something on that property. when we eliminated that, it's a parcel unto itself, and we only need to deal with the issues that deal with 307.
Yeah, so 309 is gone from the
Out.
application.
Out. If we ever need any relief from that, we'll have to file another application and come back. Mr. McLean is the owner and equity of both 307 and 309 under a contingent agreement of sale. A copy of that, excluding the monetary terms, which I redacted, is attached to the application. Would the board like me to introduce that as an exhibit tonight?
Yes, but I'll leave up to you whether you want to introduce everything at once at the end of your case or whether you want to take each piece as it comes forward. Do you have multiple copies of it? We have it in the materials that was presented to us
Yes.
in advance.
Correct.
Why don't we take a moment, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
to mark exhibits?
Fine.
I would mark the application as A1, if that's agreeable. The redacted agreement of sale would be A2. And then I've got a plot plan, which I think are you gonna replace the plot plan?
Yes, sir, we are.
So we're going to throw that out?
You can, we're not going to use it as an exhibit, so
Okay.
yes.
And then there are a bunch of photographs. Why don't we make the photographs A3? And we get rid of the 309 Conestoga Road. Unless you want it for a comparable.
Yeah, we may use it as a comparable.
Okay,
Let's leave it in for the moment. If we don't use it, then.
Okay. The rear of Conestoga, 307 Conestoga Road is, here we go. Here we go. Come on. Papers always stick together when I'm trying to move them along. Okay. 307 Conestoga Road, front lot view would be 3A. 307 Conestoga Road, west side would be 3B. 307 rear Conestoga Road would be 3C. Are there any others that are just 307? 307 Conestoga Road, street would be 3D. That's the street view. This one doesn't have a say what it is.
Yes, that is a 307. That's the front yard of 307.
Okay, so that's 3E.
Somehow or another, that didn't get labeled.
Okay. How about across the street from 307 Conestoga Road would be 3F. Conestoga Road parking would be 3G. Uh, 309 Conestoga Road would be 3H. And 224 to 226 Conestoga Road, which I don't know if that's necessary, that's showing another shared driveway. But if you want it,
Yeah, that's probably not necessary.
Okay, so we get rid of that. Okay, I got it. I have 8 of them, 3A to H for the photos, and that's it.
I have here a copy of the deed for 307. I
Okay.
also have 309 if you want it.
I don't, 309 is no longer part of the application.
Do you wish to have copies for all of the members of the board, or just one?
If you have them, bring them up.
I have them.
Oh, okay. then. Okay, this will be Exhibit 4.
Thank you.
I have here copies of the two plans. All right, well, okay, I have, yeah, of course, it's just- We have 2 plans. One is the existing conditions plan. We're up to
Or 8.5, I believe.
85.
Thank you, sir. This is 5. You done with these?
Then we have the proposal, which I'll mark A6.
As council's marking that, I have a quick question for the folks in the audience. I know we have an item which is behind this, which probably many of you are here for. Because I want to have an appropriate focus on the testimony here, who in our audience is here with particular interest as to this application? Thank you.
Six.
believe this is the last one. We have an aerial photograph of the area.
Okay. Do you have a, I thought I had another one of these. Maybe I do. Yeah, okay,
Please proceed.
Thanks.
okay. And then put that in the folder when we're done.
Mr. McLean intends to build a house on Lot 307. The lot is in the R3 zoning classification, it always has been. It is well over the required 10,000 square feet of land, but it is only 50 feet wide, which makes it impossible to meet the requirement of the 70-foot wide at the building line requirement of Section 28025A. And because of its narrowness, we're requesting relief also from the side yard requirements of Section 28025D, which requires side yards be at least 15 feet on each side and an aggregate of 35 feet. We're asking for side yards of only 10 feet on each side. One's 10.2, the other's 10 on the nose. As the property now stands, the only thing that could be built there is a 15-foot wide house, which would be totally impractical as a matter of just common sense in this day and age. It wouldn't be right for the property. It would permit a much larger house if you wanted to conform it to the building envelope than we're proposing. The house that we propose is only going to be 30 by 60, meaning that the intrusion into the side yard would only be for a length of 60 feet on each side, not down the entire side. There are several houses in the area. As a matter of fact, most of the lots are not 70 feet wide in that area. Going east on Conestoga Road on the same side of the street, 6 out of 7 do not have 70-foot wide lots, and they all have houses that are wider than 15 feet, probably wider than, or as wide as 30 feet. Same is true on the other side of Conestoga Road. Those houses, the lots are all under 10,000 square feet, and they are from 70 feet wide down to 50 feet wide. And I'm citing there 1, 2, 3, 4 properties. They're all 70 feet wide or less. The proposed house would be 138.6 feet from the Conestoga Road right-of-way, when 35 feet is all that is required. And it would also be 56.7 feet from the rear yard when only 35 feet is required. So we are proposing to build a much smaller house than the building envelope would permit, which will greatly reduce the total building coverage in exchange for the wider side yards. The house and garage, as I said earlier, would be 30 by 60, and the garage would be contained on the lower level of the house. So it would be within that envelope. If it were not for the fact that 307 is a non-conforming lot, the applicant could build the proposed house by right. The subsequent passage of zoning regulations now in effect, if enforced, would deny the applicant his by right use. Zoning, we feel, cannot legally restrict the right to use the property pursuant to the rights which ran with the premises from the time of its creation. Therefore, we feel that 307 is entitled to relief from the side yard setback requirements as a non-conforming lot under Section 280-101B, and that the relief requested is both only dimensional and relatively small, and it will actually improve the existing conditions on that property and conform to existing conditions on most of the other properties in the area of Conestoga Road, and it will not adversely affect the general health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants of nearby properties or the public. We also feel that the granting of the relief requested will be in keeping with the conditions existing in the neighborhood, blending down from the single family to the multifamily to the commercial uses running from east to west on both sides of Conestoga Road. Granting the relief requested will shore up the buffer between the residential, multifamily, and commercial uses and generally be better than the by right house would be. I'll present testimony from Mr. McLean's engineer, Patrick Spellman, who will put meat on the bones of what I've just outlined for the board, and he will be my first witness.
As you proceed, try to make it a point to, I know they're not hugely significant, to point out the differences in the plan between what you're proposing this evening as contrasted with what was originally submitted and perhaps with what others may be familiar with in terms of the driveways and things like that. But my understanding is that the structure that you're proposing has changed in no respect from the submission of a month ago, right?
That's correct.
Right. So just as you're going through, point out what is different. And you don't have to do it first, but just in the course of your
Do
presentation.
you understand that instruction?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right.
Okay, are you swearing in? You do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And state your full name, please.
Patrick Spellman,
Spell.
Spellman.
What is it
I'll
again?
give you a card.
Right now that you've been sworn, state your full name, please,
Patrick Spellman.
and what is your occupation?
I'm a project manager with Site Engineering, professional engineer in Pennsylvania.
And how long have you been a civil engineer licensed in Pennsylvania?
Excuse me. Over 30 years, since 1990.
Okay.
Almost 30 years.
And what, do you have any other relevant training, background, and experience?
Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Lehigh University in 1984. And I've been working in the civil engineering field since I graduated.
Do you do a significant amount of land planning and the type of work that's involved in this application?
Yes, this is the bulk of the work that I do is land development.
And are you familiar with Radnor Township codes?
Yes, I am.
Have you practiced in Radnor before?
Yes, I have.
Do you know approximately how many times?
No. Over the 10 years I've been working in this area, dozens of times.
Okay. I
dozens and
I would
dozens.
move that Mr. Spellman be accepted as an expert.
Agreed, thank you.
Now, can you identify the property we're talking about, 307 Conestoga Road, please?
Excuse me. Yeah, so this is 307 Conestoga Road, fronting on Conestoga Road, a narrow lot, 50 feet wide. So it is east of Bloomingdale Avenue, which is on the other side of the condominiums here. It is in the R3 residential district. And it is about 13,100 square feet lot area. It is mostly a vacant lot. It has some minor improvements, a shed, and a little bit of asphalt.
Now, what properties are immediately to the west next door to it? What's there?
This is the condominiums at 229 Bloomingdale. This is 138 single residential dwelling, 138 Runnymede, 136 Runnymede, single-family dwelling.
And to the immediate east of the property in question, what's there?
And this is 309 Conestoga Road.
And what's on it?
It has a single-family dwelling.
And going east from there, just generally, what else is in the area?
It is single-family dwellings for the most part, going east.
Okay. Now, explain to the panel what you've done and what relief we would need to do what you have, the plans you have drawn.
Right. So we placed the 30 by 60 house in the back portion of the lot. As you can see, this is the building envelope that is part of the R3 zoning. This lot was created in 1922, I believe, and the zoning was introduced in 1929. So when this lot was created, they had not contemplated a 15-foot minimum and a 35-foot aggregate side yard. When you apply the current zoning to the lot width, you wind up with this 15-foot wide building envelope, which is too restricted to build a house that would be comparable with the neighborhood. So we took a 30 by 60 footprint with a front-loading garage, driveway. This is the main difference between the exhibit you had submitted and now, is that this driveway does not split off the 309. So there used to be used to split off the 309 here. That's been removed. The driveway has been shifted, so it's entirely on 307.
What was the rationale for the location of the home at that specific spot on the lot?
To be able to do just push it back, not to be too close to this house, not to be too crowded on the front.
On that diagram, are you able to either show or give us a sense of the most proximate structures to the, I guess that's
So
east?
The closest building is 309 residence. So this is the building. It's about 6 feet off the common property line.
Okay.
So that's the house right there. This is the condominiums. This is about 30 feet off the common property line, this condominium building. The houses on Runnymede are about 90 feet and 100 feet off the common property line. And then Lansdowne is about 140 feet.
Thank you.
I can show that on the aerial since we put it as an exhibit if you want to.
We do have A7, and thank you for calling that to our attention. And,
There is a fence between 307 and the condominiums at 229 Bloomingdale, is there not?
I believe there is a stockade fence that runs along here, turns into a chain link fence as it gets further in the back.
Is it opaque, or can you see through it?
I believe that, I don't know about the chain link fence, but I believe the stockade fence is a privacy fence.
All right. Continue with what you were about to tell the panel.
So to put this house on this property, with the 30-foot width, we wound up putting a side yard of 10.2 on the condominium side and and 10 on the 309 side. It meets all other zoning requirements other than the side yard setback.
And just to clarify that point, then, the only relief that we need to do what is depicted on that plan is relief from the 70-foot wide at the building line requirement and relief from the side yard requirements. Is that correct?
Correct, with the 50-foot being an existing nonconformity and then forcing us into the smaller side yards.
And did you develop this plan by visiting the site and taking measurements?
Yes,
and so forth?
our firm, Site Engineering Concepts, did the survey, and then I did the proposed layout.
If you were to build or try to build a house within the existing, well, let me scratch that. Let me ask another question first. What is the building envelope of the house that you propose?
The building envelope, I believe it would be 30 feet wide for the distance of the house, of the 60-foot house.
Okay. Is that size in keeping with the neighborhood?
I did look at the aerial photograph. Tried to do some measurements off of that for the houses in the area, and they were seemed to be on the order of 25 to 30 feet wide. Looked at the lots on the Delco Access tax map. Tried to make some measurements off of that. It's approximate measurements, and then the lots look to be about 50 feet wide in the area.
This is going to propose to be a two-story house, correct?
That's my understanding.
So it's 1,800 square feet of floor? Is
the
how it would
footprint,
work?
1,800 square foot footprint.
And what is the area of the building envelope as it currently exists, if you know?
No, I do not know.
Okay.
The 15 by 200. Yeah, I don't want to do the math.
All right. Did you?
Can I ask you just a quick question? That the diagram says that this is a house with garage. Where's the garage located for
Yeah, so it's a-
307?
It's a front-loading garage, so it would be right in here. The actual architectural, so we don't have. So I would,
So the front of the house would basically be a garage entry, and so the 1,800 square feet would include the garage, is that correct?
Yes,
So
on that floor, yes.
and then on the floor above, it could be
Yes.
usable?
Correct.
Okay, thank
Correct.
you.
And I heard the reference to 2 stories. What is the projected height from ground of the top part of the building?
again, we don't have final architecturals, but it will be less than 35 feet. The architect knows that it's his requirement.
We would meet all other township regulations and codes. We'd have to, or we'd be back again.
That includes impervious?
Yes.
Correct.
Now, the location of the house as you've drawn it, what was the reason for putting it there as opposed to further back or further forward?
This is where the applicant felt was the best location on the lot. There was also the consideration of wanting to come back into this area, but that's no longer an issue.
All right. And placing the house where it is on the lot, what are you going to be looking, what does it look at on each side? What is the occupant going to see from inside, and what are the neighbors going to see from the outside?
So to the west, to the condominiums, it would be this condominium building. And I guess I'm not too sure what's in between the property line and the condominium building. Them looking back would see, a 60-foot, the 60-foot side of the house. On the 309 side, the property would be looking at the backyard, and the 309 house would be looking at the front yard of the subject property.
Obviously, you consulted on the location of the house, is that correct?
Meaning, with the
Mr.
applicant.
McLean?
Yeah,
Yes.
with the applicant, yes.
All right. What, if any, opinion do you have about whether that is the optimal location or whether there would be other acceptable locations for the house?
It, I guess, depends on, I guess another possible applicant would be up here, but when you start getting a tight front, if somebody's interested in having something of a front yard, it would preclude that.
And does the lot not slope from the street downward towards the rear?
Yes, it does.
Would pushing it up closer to the street create any kind of problems as far as the grade and ingress and egress of vehicles, particularly in bad weather?
But no, it's fairly generally sloping property. It doesn't have any steep slopes or anything that we'd have to negotiate.
Does the footprint that you've created reflect the minimum side yard relief required to enable the building of a house that is both practical and in keeping with the neighborhood?
Yes, we believe so.
Does it minimize the impact on the neighboring, the immediately neighboring properties?
Yeah, well, we also believe it does. I don't think it has any detrimental effects to public health, safety, welfare, or the neighboring properties. I think it represents, a typical residential use for the area.
And as a comparative consideration, what's the real difference between, visually anyway, between having the proposed house on the lot where it is or one that is built within the current building envelope?
I guess it depends on your preference, but that would be a fairly skinny house, and I think it would look rather silly. I am an engineer, not an architect, but it would look fairly silly.
But is it, I mean, if you're looking at it,
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Is your question within the existing building envelope or within existing zoning restrictions? The question you just phrased is how would this compare to the existing, to being built on the existing building envelope?
well, actually, you could answer that both ways. I was allowing for the fact that you would, that you could place this house in other locations on the lot with my question. But basically, what I'm trying to get to is the point as to whether or not there's, basically, what's the difference? What are you going to, what is the impact of having a 30-foot wide house on this property versus a 15-foot wide house as to the neighboring properties, regardless of where it's located on the lot?
Thank you, and now I do better understand your question, and if your witness wants to answer that question, thank you.
Can you answer that, or do I have to repeat it?
Yeah, I thought with the question, building a 15-foot wide house
Right.
would not be in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. I mean, it's not it's
And if
not
you're-
center city. So.
And if you're in your backyard of one of the neighboring houses, how much difference is it really going to make whether the house is 30 feet wide or 15 feet wide as to what you as a neighbor experience back there?
Considering a lot of these neighbors and their houses are 100 feet or so farther away, I don't know if you would notice the difference in the 5 to 10 foot difference that we'd be talking about.
And keeping it
And-
back here
yeah.
keeps it from being right next to the house that's on 309, does
And
it
by
not?
having it further back here, it gives this house more space.
At least you see more open area when you look out the window, and vice versa with the proposed house looking across 309's back, is that correct?
Correct.
Could I ask you a question about 309? What is the parking situation, and will the parking that was on 307 now be on 309?
I did not look at the parking at 309, so.
So, but they're currently parking a car on 307, and so that would no longer be possible, so they would then need to park it within 309, is that correct?
That's correct, and there is a parking area in the front, and initially, we were going to ask for relief for that because it doesn't have the required buffer, but we feel it's grandfathered.
Okay.
But an issue came up as to whether or not this, the original application would have to go to the Planning Commission before it came here. And we decided, since we're not going to change anything on 309 right now, we don't really need to even address the problem. I felt what we proposed initially would have been a very good solution for both properties, but
Okay, so that parking then, that's really going to be the responsibility of the 309 owner, and,
yes, but if later on we decided to do something different on 309, we could, I mean, the driveway,
Yeah,
the
you could
proposed
share it
driveway
if
would,
you'd
we
make
could
agreement.
just continue it.
Thank you.
So we're trying to get the best of both worlds here, looking towards the future.
okay.
Just turned out that we couldn't do it all at once, the way things developed. Speaking of 309 for the moment, do you know the width of that house?
I do not, but I can tell you. Sorry.
Maybe you ought to look at the other plan for that. Do you have that in a big sheet, or do you have just the little ones?
The other plan being there.
This one.
Now, this is the only one that shows the 309 house.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong, I'm thinking of the wrong thing.
Right. So this house is about 38 feet wide.
Okay.
Side yard here is a little under 6 feet. Side yard here is a little under 10 feet.
So it intrudes into the side yards by what amounts?
If you match up the 6 feet with the 15-foot minimum,
So 9?
that's 9, and then you
On the
match the
west?
9 feet with the 20-foot aggregate is 11.
Okay. So it intrudes 20 feet. And that's an old house, is it not?
My understanding it is.
I have the documents here. We didn't mark it, but I also ordered a deed for 309, and off of the Delaware County website, it indicates the house on 309 was built in 1929.
Do you know, the deed here for 307 is a 1964 deed, at least as far back as then. Is it your best knowledge that 307 and 309 were jointly owned during that 53-year period?
From 64
Yes.
on? Yes, but not quite. The 309 was owned jointly by Robert Risk Jr. and his wife. 307 was only in Mr. Risk's name for
Okay.
reasons I don't even know.
Would you happen to know either way whether at any point prior to that, the parcels were owned by unaffiliated owners?
Yes. Prior to that,
Prior to that?
if you look at the recital in the deed for 307, it says, being the same premises that so-and-so conveyed to so-and-so, and I don't remember the names of the parties. And if you wish, I'll introduce the deed for 309 so you
That's
can
not,
see
that's
the
not,
same
that's
thing.
that's not necessary.
Okay.
We, to the extent, I don't want to rush it, but if you want to pick up the pace a little bit.
Right, all right, I'll try to do that. The properties have always had separate parcel numbers and separate legal descriptions, separate deeds. Is there anything else that you want to say about this application?
I think we've hit all the high points.
And then as to the aerial photograph, what, if anything, do you want to tell the board about that?
And it gives the general character of the surrounding houses and lots, skinny, long lots, houses sitting fairly full inside those lots.
So then is it fair for me to conclude that there is side yard intrusion in many locations in the immediate vicinity?
Yeah, based on the aerials and the Delco Access tax map, it seems like there would be.
And to the west of the premises in question, is it not true that most, if not all, of the houses, converted houses and buildings there are commercial uses?
I believe so. You know, I drive down this road quite frequently.
And from looking east from the property, they're all residential?
Residential.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, if he has nothing else to add,
No.
I will,
Do either of the board members have any questions? Do you want to move your exhibits?
we
If
do.
we haven't done it, okay. They're all in the evidence. Sit tight, we may have more questions for you, but I'm going to give folks a chance if there are individuals here.
All right,
Oh, I'm
if-
sorry, excuse me. Thank you, bud.
yeah, I have Mr. McLean very
Fine,
briefly.
please. Sure,
I hope it's very briefly.
so do we.
Sir, if you'll raise your right hand, you do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, ma'am.
State your name, please.
Gary McLean.
Thank you.
What's your occupation, Mr. McLean?
I'm a
Excuse me, use the mic.
I'm sorry. The-
I'm a retired landscape contractor and now a property owner in Wayne with rental properties,
How many of those do you have?
approximately 20.
Have you built houses in Radnor before?
I have
How many do you know?
more than 4.
And do you also live in Radnor Township?
I do,
How long?
forever.
Your
I was-
entire life?
I was born at Bryn Mawr Hospital in 1947.
And raised in the same house in which you now live?
That's correct,
All right.
with the Radnor High School.
And you have entered this, the agreement of sale has been marked as, I think, A2 here?
I have.
With the estate of Robert Risk Jr.?
That's correct.
All right. Have you been present and heard the statements that I have made in the testimony that Mr. Spellman gave while he was testifying?
I heard everything, yes, sir.
All right. Do you disagree with anything that was said?
No,
Do you have anything to add to it?
no. I mean, I build nice properties. They take a while. We put our heart and soul in them, and I still own everything I built, so.
Now, as far as you know, the lot that you've agreed to purchase, being Lot 3, the address 307 Conestoga Road, are you purchasing the same legal description that has always, it's always had?
I believe so.
Have you done anything since you entered this agreement to change the dimensions of the lot, the legal description of the lot, or the
No.
topography of the lot? Now, did you take pictures of the premises?
I did. I think the exhibits were taken by me.
All right. And without going through each one, do they depict, as they're labeled, the properties in question?
They do.
You've seen those exhibits, and those are the pictures that you took?
Yes, sir.
You took, and you furnished them to me, correct?
That's correct.
When did you take those pictures?
Approximately 45 days ago.
All right. All right, I think I'll stop there unless it turns out that we need something more. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
The people in the audience.
If there are folks in the audience who would like to be heard on this application, now is the time. Please approach, introduce yourself, Need to be sworn in. Give us your home address, and then we're happy to hear from you.
Hi, Shannon Warner,
You
S-H-A-N-N-O-N.
solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And spell both names.
First name Shannon, S-H-A-N-N-O-N. Last name Warner, W-A-R-N-E-R. And 134 Runnymede Avenue is an adjacent property to the proposed backyard there.
If it's able to be readily shown off on the plan, perhaps point to where it is.
I'll try to, I'm not sure.
Or if it's
that-
not on the plan, give us a sense of where it is.
So let me maybe clarify a little bit what we heard earlier. This is me here, but there are actually two homes between our property and the condominiums here. So we're at 134, there's a 136 and a 138. I'm not sure why it's
Okay.
depicted that way.
Thank you.
Sure. So I'm speaking in opposition to granting the variance relief that's being sought. I guess the perspective that I bring to this, there's a few points. One, I don't know that there's true hardship here as I understand it, in that this is a contingent sale of a property, so not something that's currently owned by those who are presenting the plan. And that being the case, this property has existed since 1964 as a side yard, an extension of the property at 309 Conestoga. Known the Risks Senior and Junior. Mr. Risk Senior passed away recently. He bought the property explicitly in 1964 to have a buffer between the condominiums that had been developed or were being developed on that property, and has maintained it as such since then. The request for the relief would impact us at this property, so we'd have a tighter envelope there. I heard that our home is close to 100 feet from the property line there. I haven't looked at the measurement recently, but I'd say all of those three homes have patios and sort of directed their backyard's focus and their patio's focus towards this property in the back here. It is chain link fence. It is not opaque. I heard that question earlier. So some of the concerns are the encroachment into, tighter to our property than the current zoning permits. We bought our home 20 years ago. At the time, we researched what zoning allowed for. We've renovated extensively since that time. One of the things that we had hoped to do was to rebuild what had been an existing wraparound front porch. And our current setback requirements don't allow for that, right? So there were things we knew that we weren't going to be able to get relief for due to hardship because financial hardship didn't exist. So we didn't even try. We worked within zoning requirements on everything that we've done and think that should be the case here as well. Another thing that we heard was that there was no potential damage to other properties in the area. There is a significant stormwater runoff that comes down that hill from Conestoga Road back through all of the properties, downhill from that. So increased impervious surface by allowing the development here is going to create some additional problems. You get any kind of rain and we've got flooding. So I think most of the neighbors that you'll hear here will bring that up as a point of concern and something that we're worried about. I think others will have a lot of other points to make. I've said my piece and I'll let others take the mic.
Don't leave just yet. Any
Sure.
questions, council? Okay, any questions from the board members? Thank you for coming and taking your time. Folks, if several of you want to speak, just step on up as one person's done, and even if you want to create a line there, that's fine too. Please introduce yourself, be sworn in.
Hi, this mic or this mic, does it matter? No.
Whatever, just speak.
Douglas Getty.
What is it?
Douglas Getty, D-O-U-G-L-A-S-G-E-T-T-Y.
You do solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing
I do. So I live at 207 Lansdowne Avenue, which is, oh boy, I've got to go turn around here. It's going to be over here. So it's parallel to Conestoga. and just off of Runnymede. So I live right at the corner of Runnymede and Lansdowne. And the point I'd like to make is this property is, to piggyback off some previous comment, is pretty seriously downhill sloping towards the corner of Lansdowne and Runnymede. And when we have rain of any magnitude, the township actually puts out high water markers. And it's sort of, if you're familiar with the fire station there, it's a little further downhill. That whole area floods pretty extensively. And so starting at, really at the corner of my house, they put up signage that warns of high water. And so by developing this property and the magnitude and the fashion that we're talking about, it seems to me that it would sort of magnify the issues that we're talking about, the impervious ground and the flooding issues. So that's my point.
Please don't leave.
Yep.
I'm going to ask after every witness whether you have questions.
I don't have questions.
Fine. You'll have a chance to speak to these issues. And I'll say this to this witness, and I will say it to other witnesses. So if you are speaking, and if you intend to express your opposition, we need you to expressly say that you are in opposition, because that is legally significant in making a record of whether you would have individually any appeal rights.
I apologize. I'm in opposition.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Anyone else care to speak?
My name is John Satterfield. I live at 138 Runnymede Avenue. It's not shown on here, but I'll show you where it is.
Please.
Sir,
Yes, sorry.
solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes. So yeah, my property, if I can read this.
Speak
upside
up
down.
or use
Oh,
your hands.
I'm sorry. Right here. You got me now? We're right next to the condominium. We do not, our property actually ends before the line, the property line for this lot we're talking about, but we have a direct view. That house would be pretty much directly behind my house. One thing I would like to clarify, to my knowledge, there is a fence that the condominium folks have for their trash or recycling, but there is no other opaque or any other fence. We have a split rail fence in the back that we put there, and we did specifically so we could look out that way. And it's true, there is some homes that are close in between there, and frankly, one of the things that we liked, even though our house is small, we have that nice view in the back. So I will say I'm in opposition to this for all the reasons stated. I'm concerned about the water runoff. I think that it appears that they're trying to jam a very small house into an even smaller piece of property. And my own opinion is that even though there are other homes around that are small with small pieces of property, they've been there for a very long time. And I think there's a reason this property wasn't developed before, and I think the reasons are coming out why they weren't done before. Thank you.
Thank you.
No question.
Members? Okay, I will be moving quickly, but Bud and Matt, interrupt me if you do have questions. Okay.
Solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And state your full name, please,
Kevin Hicks,
and spell.
Kevinhicks. I live at 211 Lansdowne Avenue, and that would be right across Lansdowne Avenue from the bordering property here. And I'm opposed to this development or variance, and primarily for reasons that have been previously stated, but the stormwater issue is a big one in our neighborhood. Conestoga Road does not have curbs on it, so everything from even up the street from the art center, from all the way from the trail, is running down into our neighborhood, through our neighborhood, hopefully out towards the middle school where they've done the water retention planning or whatever it was. This is just going to magnify the issues that are in our neighborhood right now.
Thank you.
No questions.
Okay.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Thank you, and state your full name.
It's Donna Higgins, Donna Higgins. And I live on 206 Lansdowne, which is I back up right to where the house would be, so right behind the Risks home. And so I also have a view into this backyard area, and I also have the direct line of the water all coming off of Conestoga Road. And I moved into the house 2 years ago. You're talking about Conestoga Road. It's a totally different neighborhood than what's behind there. So I think what's really important are the side houses, both on Lansdowne and Runnymede, because it's open space, and it's not, if you look back there, you can't really see it on the plan, but it doesn't make sense that a house sits back there, both aesthetically for the neighbors, as well as I had to put in a huge amount of drainage system into my yard as when I did the renovations 2 years ago. It helped, but there is just a huge amount of water that comes off of Conestoga still, that comes through my yard, down my driveway, and to my other neighbors on the other side of Lansdowne. So putting another house in there, I can't even understand what the water is going to do. I put a French drain in. I did a ton of work to try to get the water problem fixed. My yard is like a giant sponge if it rains. So it's a very significant problem, and I'm in complete opposition, both from that reason and from an aesthetic point of view for the value of the houses with the house sitting in their backyard.
Thank you.
No questions.
Thank you.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do. My name is Brigitta Sama, B-I-R-G-I-T-T-A-S-A-M-A. I live at 136 Runnymede Avenue, which is right here. So I would have a direct line of sight to the home. So from an aesthetic point of view, from a drainage point of view, I oppose this plan.
Thank you. Thank you.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And your full name?
Elizabeth Yeager, it's Elisabethyyeager. I live at 218 Lansdowne, which is approximately over here. I just want to affirm that there is a tremendous amount of runoff coming off Conestoga. I and my neighbors all have put in extensive drainage to deal with it. We still get flooding in our basement occasionally. This is the low part of town, even the township. I mean, it's a challenge to deal with the stormwater. And as noted, the way the proposed development would be by situating the house so far back, you're creating a very extensive long driveway that's going to generate a lot of runoff. It is going to be a problem for the downhill neighbors. So I just want to affirm what everyone else is saying, that stormwater is a huge concern for us in this area.
Do you oppose the app?
I
We
do.
ha- It's a, in recent case, we need the magic words.
I do oppose this development.
Thank you.
No questions.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Baron Gemmer, B-A-R-O-N-G-E-M-M-E-R. And yes, I'm here to oppose the application. So hopefully it'll be very brief.
Mr. Gemmer,
Yes.
where's your home?
I'll put this up, it'll help. Here's the property in question. This is my home, but this is a property I also own on Bloomingdale. The home is at the corner of Conestoga and South Wayne. This is Bloomingdale and West Wayne, approximately 750 to 800 feet from the applicant's.
Thank you.
building.
Go ahead.
And per the actual application, where 1,000 feet would have been the notice for saldo, which is what this originally was.
Try to keep your voice up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I'll try this one. Is that better? First, I'll be very brief. The first point I want to make regards the, I heard 280-101B put out, but since 309 is off the table, I don't see how that applies. The only 280-101 I see applies to C, which is related to their building width, which gives them the right to build. So I'm just going to concentrate on the setback issue, which they do need, in my opinion, the relief on. But I don't think what they're asking for is the minimum required, because as you heard in the testimony that some of the buildings were 26 to 30 along, and actually if you look at 309, which is on here, the orientation of the proposed building is this direction, length this way. The length was measured here for the width. If you actually turn this building like the other one would be, this width here is 22, this width here is 26, and I think it goes up to 30. So you can see if you put that building there and just took that chunk off, you'd only even need a 26-foot wide building, and a lot of it is even 22 right there. So that's my first point, is I don't think they're asking for the minimum relief that they could get on that. Secondly, as shown in the overheads before, and I have a synopsis of that, there've been some, I know it's hard to see, but if you remember some of the overheads before, which I believe is right there, if you look at what's consistent, because they talked about being with the character of the neighborhood, all these homes are pretty much at the 35-foot mark. So putting something 135 foot back is inconsistent with the look of the neighborhood, particularly with the slopes where that building would go lower, 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 and you might just be seeing a rooftop from Conestoga as opposed to an actual building. In addition to that, I know, again, this is small, but the driveway here, if this home is moved more in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood, where it's at the 35-foot plus or minus mark, or actually plus mark, not minus, you would eliminate 1,000 feet of impervious surface, because not only with this driveway could it go directly into the garage there, but you'd only end up with like this much there, and then that common area there. And I calculated out it's about 1,000 square feet of impervious. And given what we've heard about some of the runoff, I think that's an important consideration. Secondly, next has already been noted, if the house was moved there, it would minimize the impact because it would be next to you see the parking lot here, if it gets in the 35-foot, I think it's better on this one. If you see the building here, if this is more in keeping with the rest of the neighborhood where it's at the 35-foot mark or 40-foot mark roughly, the side setback here, which is 10 proposed and probably should be more, is next to a parking lot there. So it doesn't intrude as much upon the neighbor there. It would intrude more upon the applicant's other equitably owned property, but it would be very much away from the rest of these. So it would have less impact on the neighbors as a whole because only this house would be impacted and there'd be a driveway over there, or excuse me, a parking lot over there. And lastly, this is the, I'm getting good at that. If you look at 307 by itself, which is what we're doing now because 309 is taken off, we shouldn't be considering, what if they want to do for 309. We need to consider this plan in and of itself. And I think if you look at this driveway configuration, how far back it is, particularly with the characters of the neighborhood, it really doesn't make any sense. With 309 not being considered, this just looks like a silly plan. And it has a lot of bad things to it. Too much impervious, not characters of the neighborhood, and impacting more of the neighbors. The other thing that we're missing here, and I have a picture, but I think everybody agrees it does slope, is that when they go to get a building permit for this, they're required to designate the 14% and 20% steep slopes, which there's a ton on this property. And that information would be very useful to get the impact of when you move this building back, not only is it getting closer to these, but it's getting closer because it's getting lower to them, because this is higher up. So you're gaining both vertical and horizontal distance in getting close to them. And so that would have been very nice to have had those elevations, since it's not going to be extraneous for them. They would have had to produce them anyway. And those are the points I have.
Are you opposed to the application?
Yes, I'm sorry, did I not say that up front?
I think you said that.
Okay.
I
Thank you
tried
very
to follow
much.
the lead, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any others who would like to be heard on this matter? Once we stop, just so the group knows, once we stop hearing public comment, we stop hearing public comment. So one more time, is there anyone who wants to be heard on this?
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth,
I do.
and your full name.
Philip Harris, Philip Harris. So I don't have any new comments to what's been already said. I just want to state my opposition to the property.
And Mr. Harris, your address?
Oh, sorry, yeah. I'm in 132 Runnymede, which I think is around here,
Okay.
next to Shannon Warner. Like I said, I don't have anything else. I just want to state my opposition to the property.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none. Going to give the applicant a chance to, if there are specific points they wish to respond to or summarize and close, please do so.
I think I can handle this without presenting further testimony. This application is not about the control of water runoff. That is an important issue, but it's not a zoning issue. When Mr. McLean were to go to apply for his permits, he's going to have to satisfy the township engineer, who's very strict, that he can control the water runoff for his project in accordance with the township codes. So it's not, this issue is not whether we can build a house, it's whether or not we can get relief from the side yards. So the choice is not to prohibit a house being built on this property, it's whether or not to allow it to be wider than the building envelope. There are, if you look at the overhead photo, a number of houses that sit farther back from some of the older houses which are closer to the street. Probably because back in the day when Conestoga Road was built, I happen to know a guy who came out here in 1906 when it was a dirt road. Those houses were built in the 20s, most of them. It still was a much narrower road at the time. There's a reason that people want to be back farther from the road. All of those issues, no question, they're important issues, and they will be addressed before the township engineers and when the application process is pursued. But they're really not zoning issues. We have a right to build on the property. One of the witnesses conceded that we can't meet the 70-foot wide at the building line requirement. It's a legal lot, so under 101, we're entitled to relief from that requirement. And the case then becomes how much, if any, intrusion into the side yards the board will allow. I don't think the proposed project is going to present any more of a problem than a longer, narrower house would of the same square footage that could be built within the current building envelope. So I think those issues, while I certainly appreciate the neighbor's position, nobody likes to see a house being built in their backyard. I have two going up in my backyard right now. I would wish they weren't there, but the owner has the right to develop them. And that's where we are here. So once again, urge the board to vote in favor of this application, and thank you for your attention.
I think we have one question.
Yeah, I just had a question to clear up the ownership status of the property. You know, I've heard that she's the beneficial owner. When I read the sale agreement, I'm sorry I don't have it here, it seemed like the property has been purchased and it's just awaiting a determination on the zoning. Is that correct?
Yes.
Huh? So you're really the owner, not the beneficial owner?
Well, he's the owner in equity because he hasn't actually settled on the property. But
Has he settled on 309?
No. He has the option, if for some reason or other he doesn't get the approval tonight, the agreement of sale says he has the option to purchase the property at a price that was previously offered by a competing bidder without the zoning relief.
But that purchase price has already been placed either in escrow or provided to the seller, is that correct?
I can't hear you.
Excuse me?
Gary? She needs to hear you.
We put a deposit down with the agreement of sale.
But, you know.
We haven't closed.
You haven't closed, but I guess I'm just unclear whether you really own it, because it sounds to me like you do, but
We
I'm
have it
not.
under agreement of sale, we have a deposit, we have
Is
not
the
closed.
deposit equal to the purchase price?
It is not.
Mr. Hirsch, I think it's clear that, given their role as equitable owner, they have standing to pursue the appeal, and there are some issues associated with trying to dig too deep into the
Okay, I
details.
don't want to go there, but because there are two properties, and we're thinking about how one property has been pulled off and the other one's there, and I don't know whether this gentleman owns both properties or just owns one, or may not own either of them.
I mean,
Okay.
Yeah,
I've said enough.
We'll
I'm
move
done.
He has
on.
both under agreement of sale, and I'm pretty sure he's either going to buy both or neither. The agreement does not provide for the option to buy one or the other.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Short of soliciting a motion yet, I will open up for comments by either of my fellow board members.
So I'm having a hard time seeing how I can personally vote in favor of this because it's not the minimum relief required. And in the testimony, I heard that some homes in the neighborhood are 25 feet wide, whereas this planned home is 30 feet wide. And when you're looking at a small setback, any increase in what can be put in that side yard is meaningful. So even if you decrease the size of a house by 5 feet, that creates a meaningful increase in the size of the side yard. So for that reason, I'm having a hard time with this one.
My thought in terms of the analysis on the side yard is there's a threshold question of hardship, and we need to give consideration to whether the property can be used for its zoned purposes without impingement upon the side yard. You know, can you have a house of that width serve as a residence? And then I think the threshold question which you're raising, Matt, is whether if there is a hardship, do we believe the relief sought is the minimum amount required? I mean, I also think that we need to consider, per the code, in granting relief, whether the relief granted, and I'm looking at the quote here, significantly injure or detract from the use of surrounding property or the character of the neighborhood in light of the zoning classification and area affected. So obviously we have to weigh the evidence that was presented by neighbors as against the evidence presented by the applicant, but I do think that one of the considerations which is appropriate to consider would be the impact upon the neighborhood should the variance be granted.
I agree with what you've just said about the impact on the neighborhood and the neighbors, that when we look at the long history of this property and the way it's been used and the way it fits into the character of the neighborhood, that this just seems like a really significant change, and I'm not sure that, that given the long use, given the fact that we're talking about a beneficial ownership here, that they're purchasing something that, really could be worked through in a way that satisfies the character of the neighborhood. So I would say that I haven't heard anything here that would create a hardship on this particular purchaser.
Having heard from both of you, I would invite a motion.
May I respond before the board?
No,
votes?
sir.
Okay.
I invite a motion from one of the board members.
I would move that we sustain the decision of the Township zoning officer in regard to declining this special exception or variance
variance.
under the code
And deny the relief granted.
and deny the relief requested.
That's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. Relief is denied. If folks who are leaving now could leave relatively quickly and quietly so we can move on to our next item. We are going to take a 5-minute recess. We will, 8:33, if you're interested in the next item or an applicant on the next item, please don't go too far. We're going to start in 5 minutes.
Thank you, John. Good night.
Okay, we're going to bring the meeting back into session. Okay. This is appeal number 2988. The applicants Pamela R. Forelli, Denise O'Brien Dayton, Nelson Dayton, Ashley Eldridge Wiltie, Brett Wiltie, Kimberly Hayes Coffey, Michael W. Coffey, William P. Wendell, Ann P. Wendell, Patricia M. Long, Walter T. Long. Properties located at 17 Aldwin Lane, 19 Aldwin Lane, 21 Aldwin Lane, 27 Aldwin Lane, 31 Aldwin Lane, 35 Aldwin Lane, and zoned R3. Seek a 2-foot variance from section 280-109, fences and walls of the zoning code, to install an 8-foot fence to enclose the backyards of the applicant's properties, and also seek a variance from section 280-144 of the zoning code to obtain a building or use permit within 12 months from the date of the authorization of a variance, or to commence a substantial amount of work within 12 months from the date of the issuance of the permit for such work. Okay, so we have an unusual circumstance here where we have accepted an appeal on multiple properties and multiple property owners. Now, do we have here counsel or representative?
Counsel. I'm the representative,
Okay.
and I'm representing
Then,
all 6 properties.
Is there someone here from all 6 properties?
There are 2 properties are not represented. One, however, has authorized me via email today to represent her property should to be out of town on a family matter. The other property is not represented this evening.
We have some difficulties.
Yeah, I know
Coming
that's.
now.
She's not an attorney.
Well, we got to get our facts straight first, so let's bear with that.
Let me just please get your name.
My name is Patricia Long.
Okay.
We have to have a power of attorney. I mean, and that's, it's not an email, it's got to be a power of attorney. If
For someone not here, you mean?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
So-
but I'm hearing from some of my neighbors that the other household is going to be here momentarily.
Well, if they.
Email, no, okay, I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm
All right, so,
incorrect.
so that being said,
Yeah,
here's the direction I went ahead, and if the solicitor can tell me whether mechanically this works. I want to proceed with the appeal as to the properties where individuals are here, as to each property. And the question is, do I have to dismiss as to the others, or I can continue those for future consideration?
The application, unfortunately, puts them all in together. And I think candidly, procedurally, it's a all fall or all stand. I think that we originally, and I was participated in this, the question was whether they could use a aerial photograph to indicate the location of the fence. And after some discussion, we agreed in this instance only, without any precedent.
Okay,
But
well-
still, they were, it was envisioned that they would file separate applications, and they haven't. And so I'm not very comfortable. Now,
Well, let me ask a question of the folks who are in the room here. Or let me ask this question. Is there anything on the record that was submitted in advance in opposition to the appeal? John, I'm asking you that
no,
question.
there was
Okay.
nothing.
Is there anyone in the room who intends to testify in opposition or concern about the appeal? Okay. We're going forward, John, because nobody's going to have standing to appeal, and we've learned a lesson here tonight as to how to handle things in the future, but we got a full agenda in July, and I'm going to move forward. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to hear, I'm sorry, I didn't read your name.
my name is Tish.
Okay. We're going to hear Tish's testimony on the issue, and then I'm going to ask one representative, if it's a couple, it only needs to be one person, as to each property who is here, just to say, I agree and ratify what Tish said as being accurate as to my property. Okay, and if anybody else wants to testify as to this matter, we'll also hear them. But that's how we'll proceed in a way that I think is efficient and hopefully helpful.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yes.
We have no deeds on the property.
I have them here.
And I was told they were going to be here.
I have them here. Would you like them now?
Sure, that'd be great.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
proceed.
again, thank you so much for taking this application. My name is Tish Long. I live at 35 Aldwin Lane in Radnor Township. Tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of the applicants, which, including myself, are the property owners of 6 properties located along Aldwin Lane as listed in our application. In addition, I have copies of the deeds for all 6 properties to provide to you this evening. As our application states, we are respectfully requesting a 2-foot variance from the 6-foot fence height limitation under Section 280-109A of the zoning code for the purpose of installing an 8-foot fence to enclose the backyards of our properties to serve as a buffer from the CICD Villanova University Land Development Project. We believe that this variance request is de minimis and is necessary in order for us to maintain and preserve a sense of privacy and quiet enjoyment of our own properties. Should you grant our variance request, we are also requesting a variance from Section 280-144 of the zoning code to allow us an extended period of time to install the fence under the variance. Currently, Section 280-144 states that a variance granted by the Zoning Hearing Board shall expire if the applicant fails to obtain a building or use permit within 6 months from the date of authorization or fails to commence a substantial amount of work within 6 months from permitted, 12 months from the date of the authorization of a variance to obtain a building or use permit, or 12 months to commence a substantial amount of work for installing the fence. We believe that this extension would give all applicants sufficient time to install the fence, including those applicants who may not be immediately prepared to do so. So it's pretty basic. We just need 2 more additional feet onto our existing fences.
One question, is it proposed, this is for the entire perimeter of your respective fences?
No, that's a little unclear, I understand that.
Okay.
It's just for our rear property line.
Okay.
It's for our rear property line.
Thank you. Do members of the board have questions of this witness?
How did you determine that it was only 2 feet that you wanted versus 4 feet or 6 feet or something else?
Well, with 2 feet, I think was established about a year ago, and we were under the assumption that the township was going to do this for us because we have such a really dire hardship, I believe. So if you want to increase it, that would be wonderful too. I mean, we get such extreme impact from this.
Is there a fence that's been designed?
No fence has been designed. All these properties are individuals, so every property owner will be responsible for putting up their own fence.
And just on this time that you're requesting, do you feel that this is the time to be doing this or planning on doing this, or would you be more knowledgeable about this once the Villanova construction's further along, and then you could see whether this was what you wanted or maybe something else or maybe nothing at all?
Well, truthfully, in our property, we live in the house closest. We're directly behind St. Thomas Way. I would have put the fence up 3 years ago if I could have done so, because we were terribly impacted by a lot of vegetation that was removed with the pico poles that went in, and they removed so many trees for the west parking lot. Now, at our property, which we never saw Lancaster Avenue at all, we can see the light signals. It's quite dramatic, the change that we've experienced.
Have you discussed this with Villanova, and have they been involved with helping y'all come to a satisfactory resolution, or is that a silly question?
We have. We've
or-
been very involved during the CICD process, and Villanova has gone to the extent that they intend to go to with their buffer. But we were fully aware that when they put the buffer in the west parking lot, that in speaking to the landscape designer, myself personally, that full maturity would not be had until at least 20 years hence. So therefore, during this time period, it's very difficult. And I know the pictures from our property, which is 35 Aldwin Lane, are included in your packet. And from our rear property line, we now can see the main light signalization at St. Thomas Way. We can see the new bridge going up, and we also can see the beginning of the dorms. Again, it's quite dramatic. And for our own individual property, that additional 2 feet, because we have a lot of screening that we've put in through the years, will mean that the lights, the signalization lights, will not be coming into our house and into our rear yard. I think it's vital. We need this.
Okay, and all of your neighbors have their own opinions about what's needed or not, and so everybody's kind of agreed that people should do what they wish with their properties. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say. About a year ago, we all approached the care committee, and we were under the impression and the promise by the township that if all of our properties, being 13 properties, agreed to an 8-foot fence, that it would be given for free, similar to the trail. But we did not reach consensus, and then we realized that staff had failed to take into account that the zoning hearing board needed to really be the last deciders on this issue. So that's why we are here before you tonight, really asking and pleading that we are granted this variance.
The only relief you seek is to go up 2 feet. Other aspects of the fence, would go by, in conformity with the code.
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
So all you need is 2 feet.
Right.
Only on the rear property line.
Only on the rear property lines. And please realize, I don't know if you're familiar with Aldwin Lane, but we back up to a utility, we back up to the R100, and now we also, in theory, back up to institutional. So I don't think it's a hardship for anyone viewing our properties, in other words, is what I'm trying to say.
So should we assume that the fact that your other neighbors that aren't part of this are not here, that they are aware of what you want to do and that they're fine with what you're asking?
I'm unclear in terms of your question. Do you mean the two parties that have
No, we're talking about.
all the other?
Because we actually have the signatures of the two parties, I notice, on the application.
Yeah, I mean.
But the ones that you represent these 6 homes.
Exactly.
And there are other parcels that are not represented. Do they have any objection?
They were all contacted over a year period of time, and for whatever reason, they did not wish to partake.
But they don't oppose this?
Oh, no, they do not oppose it
So we
at all.
have normal notice that's given to neighbors when people come before us?
Right.
Has that notice been given to
It has
the
been
people?
given, and there is a notice of this meeting on
Great.
our large sycamore tree, so it's been posted there very diligently by staff. So yes.
Would you agree that because of the home's proximity to both the SEPTA rail line and the proposed development of the university, that these properties almost have unique challenges to their rear in terms of
Very
noise
much
and
so.
disruption?
Very much so.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'm going to call numbers and ask representatives, and if these are the properties where no one's here, just tell me no one's here.
Okay.
17 Alwyn? Is that Tish's? 17?
So
Wait till you're at the microphone.
So this is number 17. Pam Farrelly lives here. She is has to be in Harrisburg.
Okay, that's,
Anyway,
well, we're going to keep, if she's not
Okay.
here, it's okay, we'll keep moving.
Okay,
19,
okay.
19 Alwyn? Don't go away, Tish, please. 19 Alwyn? Please be sworn in.
Just going to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
State your full name nice and loud into the mic.
Denise O'Brien, Dayton.
Denise, you heard the earlier testimony. Do you agree and do you find it to have been truthful?
I'm in agreement, and I find it to be truthful.
I don't need anything else from you, but if you want to say anything else, we'll
I
hear you.
just thank you for the opportunity. We are severely impacted by the Villanova construction, and we appreciate anything you could do for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. 21 Alwyn?
Promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Name is Brett, B-R-E-T, Wilhite, W-I-L-H-I-T-E.
Mr. Wellhite, you've heard the testimony earlier. Did you agree with it and find it to be truthful?
I agree with Mrs. Long and find it to be truthful.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. 27? Is anyone here from 27? No? 31?
Promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do. I'm William Wendell from 31 Aldwin Lane.
Mr. Wendell, you heard Ms. Long's testimony. Did you agree with it and find it truthful?
I agree with it, and it was truthful.
Anything else you want to share with us?
No, thank you.
Okay. 35 Alwyn? And that's, okay, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who cares to provide any testimony in connection with this matter?
I have heard that the Board of Commissioners may have taken some action in terms of a recommendation. If so, do we have
Other than
testimony?
begging, I, you'd be sworn in.
And you do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
And your name.
My name is Philip R., Philip, last name is spelled A-H-R. And correctly assumed that...
Mr. R., for the record, are you an elected official in the
I
township?
am on the Commissioner of the 7th Ward, which represents Aldwin Lane. And we have also put together a motion, or a resolution, in support of this variance request. I've requested that some of the conditions that you've seen here tonight, that they be able to jointly make this appeal, so make it simplified. We've asked for Township Council to be present in case you needed them as well, and we are in support of this motion. It was passed 7-0.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Commissioner. Okay. Any other testimony? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and just solicit a motion from one of the members.
I move that we grant the appeal and that they provides for a 2-foot variance from Section 280-109, and that they have a variance from Section 280-144 to obtain the building permit within 12 months from the date of the authorization of the variance, and to commence the work within 12 months from the date of the issuance of the permit.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Okay, motion pending in the way of discussion. I think the extraordinary circumstance of these properties vis-à-vis the train line and this unique development within the township provides the hardship. I would suggest that the amount of the relief requested is the minimum amount appropriate, and I do think that flexibility as to the 12 months, whether in the future we decide it's a good idea to let people combine like this is a different question, but having done so, I think this is a fair way to deal with it. We will mark the deeds as A1. and the pictures collectively, I'm sorry, the application should be A1, the deeds A2, and the pictures collectively is A3. Okay. Motion has been seconded. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. 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 None opposed. Believe it or not, folks, we're not quite done. So if you all could leave, I'm going to ask the commissioner and council to just wait about 5 minutes. I have two things, new items that I want to discuss here in session, and I think it would be worth you guys being here for. So the rest of you folks, anyone, this is part of the meeting. Anyone is welcome to stay. But if you're intending to leave, we're going to stay in session. Folks may say goodbye, and then we'll cover a couple things real quick. Okay. Okay, the two items I wanted to discuss here is new business. Number one has to do with the composition of the board and the quantum, the numbers of board members. The municipality's planning code provides that commissioners can appoint up to 3 alternates. And I think historically Radnor has had 1 alternate. Matt, you're our alternate, and we appreciate that. And Bud's, one of you guys is the alternate. But we have a couple times run into challenging quorum circumstance. So I would like to go on the record and communicate that if the commissioners could consider the possibility of appointing either a second or perhaps a second and a third alternate, that would give us more flexibility. Matt's circumstance, again, is as an adjunct professor at the university. He needs to recuse himself from any item involving the university, so that cuts down one of our members. And it's summertime. We got 3 guys either out of the country working or on vacation or out of town on business, and it caused the need to delay the other Villanova matter. So I will, through staff, communicate that, but we have the benefit of having the chair of the commissioners here with us to hear this directly. The second point has to do with, it's staff support and it's notice. We've had 3 items, including one of some prominence, where there have been issues regarding the notices that have went out. And it's utterly unclear to me whether this has been, why. I don't know whether the proper names are not being provided to the applicants, whether the applicants have been negligent in sending things out, whether the system the township is using is not an effective system, but it's a problem. And tonight is also the 3rd meeting of the last several where, with some surprise, we don't have anyone from staff here. I understand we have challenges with Kevin's schedule because I guess he's still
On active duty.
But we're, from time to time, we're flying blind because we don't have anybody to say, what about this? What about the notices? What happened on this application? Whatever. I don't think there's any specific resolution about that or neither of these items. As to the first item, I guess I'm advising you guys I'm going to formally make the inquiry of the commissioners about an additional alternate, and I assume there's not an objection on that.
Yeah, I just wanted to support what you're saying, that I had mentioned to Bill earlier that one of my good friends serves on the TE zoning hearing board, and they have 3 alternates in TE, and that has made it a lot simpler for them to get a quorum to their meeting, so they know that they will be there for 8 meetings a year, whereas with our just 1 alternate, it presents more of an issue.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that two or three alternates is a great idea. We're all busy professionals. I know I think in the last 12 months I've missed 1 or 2 of the meetings for business, and I know pretty much everyone else has. So.
Okay. That being said, I have nothing else. So, going to bring the meeting to a close. Thank you.